Hi, I'm Dr. Manimala Selvi Naikar. I'm a consultant histopathologist and statistician, and my area of interest is meta-analysis. This is an EBM video directed at those doctors who are fond of saying things like some evidence is better than no evidence. No, that is wrong. If there's some evidence happens to be wrong, then you're going to end up treating patients based on this wrong evidence, and you're going to end up likely injuring or killing patients. So what we need is accurate evidence every time. So what are the barriers to getting accurate clinical evidence on which to treat patients? The first is known as curse of dimensionality, and the second is known as mechanism of missingness. So what exactly is curse of dimensionality? Let me illustrate it with an example. Let's say I decide to call up all those Toyota Corolla cars manufactured in 1965. Now all these cars were manufactured in a factory, which means they are identical, they are homogeneous, right? Let's say I want to do a crash test on some of these cars. Now I don't need to do a crash test on all the cars because that will leave me with no cars to sell. Because the cars are all identical, I can just choose a small sample size of 1 or 2 cars for the crash test, right? Now let's say I decide to call up all human beings born in 1965. Now human beings are not factory made, so we are non-identical, that is we are heterogeneous. So the kind of human beings who will come and stand in front of me will be, they are all born in 1965, but other than that they are male or female, they are Indians, Malay or Chinese, they are fat or they are thin, they are diabetic or non-diabetic, they have hypertension or no hypertension, right? So they are very heterogeneous. So I cannot say that a drug which works on a thin Malay man will work on a fat Indian lady, right? That has to be tested on a fat Indian lady, right? So for example, let's say I've got a sample size of 100,000. I'm so lucky I get a sample size of 100,000. Now, first I divide the sample according to age, old and young, right? So immediately my sample size drops to 50,000. Then I decide to divide it by gender, male and female. Now my sample size drops to 25,000. Now I decide to divide it by race, Malays and Chinese. So it drops to 12,000. Then I decide to divide it by BMI, high and low BMI. It drops to 6,000. Then I decide to drop it by diabetes mellitus, either yes or no. Comes down to 3,000. Hypertension or not hypertensive comes down to 1,600. And ischemic heart disease or no ischemic heart disease comes down to 800. That means that original sample size of mine of 100,000 is now only worth 800 samples, and mind you, this is only for 7 variables. Human data sets have got more than 7 variables, usually close to 100 variables, and these examples are binary. That means either old or young, male or female. But in real human data sets, they are not binary. Race can have 4 or 5 categories. BMI can have more than 3 categories, right? So if I drop my overall sample size to 10,000, my effective sample size only becomes 80. And if I drop my overall to 1,000, my effective sample size only becomes 8. So obviously we cannot treat patients based on these small sample sizes, right? So that is why we need very large sample sizes in humans. The second is mechanism of missingness. Now, all frequentist statistical analysis is based on complete data sets. There is no compensatory mechanism for incomplete data sets, right? With missing data in it. Now, very often clinicians are taught to do imputation techniques like multiple imputation. Now, the first thing that you have to know about multiple imputation techniques is it is fake or fabricated data. That is, it is not the patient's own data, right? And secondly, it is based on an assumption that the data is missing randomly. That means what? Suppose BMI has got 70% data in the data set and 30% missing. What you're actually doing is broadly you are just taking the average of the 70 and assuming that the 30% of the missing data cases have got the same average. Now, obviously, that is not a tenable assumption in human data sets. Maybe factory data sets and things like that is okay, but not in human data sets. Now, is multiple imputation legal? Yes, it is legal, because in the study you will mention that multiple imputation has been done. But can you treat patient based on imputed clinical data? No, you cannot, because it is fake or fabricated data. So how do these two factors, that is curse of dimensionality and mechanism of missing, play out in Malaysia? Now, Malaysia has got a very fragmented healthcare system, in the sense that patients can either go to government hospitals, private hospitals, university hospitals, and other kinds of hospitals. Okay, so the sample size in any one hospital is likely to be very small. So to do a proper study, we need to involve multiple hospitals. In fact, if you want to do a study on dengue deaths, you will have to probably involve every single Malaysian hospital, private, government, uni. Now, the other thing is, Malaysian patients are free to move about from hospital to hospital. They can start off in one government hospital, go to a private hospital, and then go to another government hospital, or go to a university hospital. So what does this mean for the data set? It means that the data set is going to have a lot of missing data in it. And this missing data cannot be compensated by statistical techniques. So, from a very practical level, in Malaysia, if you want to do clinical research, you need to give the clinical researchers subpoena powers, so that they are able to subpoena records from every single hospital in Malaysia, and to prevent missing data and to ensure a large sample size. But I'm sure none of you would like to give me subpoena powers, right? I mean, I know you're like me, but I'm sure you don't want to give me such powers. But there is one entity in Malaysia which already has this sort of powers. It is that is the Minister of Health, or rather, more practically, the Ministry of Health. Because the Minister of Health can mandate that certain diseases are notifiable. So currently, if we have dengue, that is a notifiable disease. You cannot hide it from the government. You have to inform the government that the patient has dengue, the location of the patient, and all the clinical data. So for the data set, all the government needs to do, all the Minister of Health needs to do, is to extend that mandate. That means now you're not only going to give the patient's name, address, age and things like that. You're also going to provide data like BMI, diabetic status. So it's basically an extension of the pre-existing mandate, right? So what will happen is the government will collect the data for us and anonymize it, and this anonymized data set will be sent to the statistician for statistical analysis. The statistician does not have to know any personal data of the patient. So in effect, the principal investigator or the first author of such papers is the Minister of Health, because it is a government authored paper. So it is going to be very accurate clinical research, and you can safely treat patients based on such research. So that is what we need to do in Malaysia. We cannot go around individual researchers or small groups of clinical researchers doing clinical research for disease which have got high morbidity or high mortality, or treatments which have got high risk. Okay, so certain diseases like dengue, cancers, heart diseases have to be done by the government, with the Minister of Health as the first author or principal investigator. So I hope the minister will be kind enough to be the principal investigator for the benefit of the Malaysian patients. And I hope that the government will ban all small studies done by individual or small groups of researchers in the various hospitals, and bring everything under the Minister of Health. This is to ensure that we have good sample size and no missing data, so that research can be accurate. Thank you.